is everybody wants to get going with the whole deal, but the necessary steps to closing on the deal haven't happened yet. So, when that's happened, my best advice is I wouldn't do anything until those steps take place first, because you never know what's going to come up in the probate. You never know what other things come up on the title commitment. So if you're starting to put money into the property without having due diligence done and run, you may find out there's a mortgage you didn't even know about, or other judgment liens against the property, maybe an IRS lien. You're putting yourself at risk by not having all of that due diligence and the probate done, or whatever needs to be done first.
Joe Seagle, your estate planning and asset protection attorney here in Orlando, Florida, on the Trust This podcast. Today, I'm here with Al Nicoletti, the Al Nicoletti. I think probably a lot of you who have seen us have probably seen Al's show, which is always produced and looks so much better than ours does. Al's got such a presence. He's really rocking it out there. He's amazed me, the growth that he has gone through over the years. I remember him when first time I met him was before COVID, and just what transformation he has gone through in his life and in his business, and just how well he's done. And his podcast, if you don't subscribe to the Al Nicoletti Show, you should. It's really great. It's entertaining. It's informative. Definitely you want to keep up with Al. But with that, Al, I want to welcome you to the Trust This podcast for this week. How you been doing?
Joe, I'm thrilled to be on the Trust This podcast. I actually love the name. I was like, wow, that's a great name for a podcast and for a lawyer hosting it, right?
Especially when you do trust, right?
Exactly. It only makes sense. I'm doing great, Joe. I will say this, never been busier, lots of probates going on. Love running my show and having you on the podcast, which was a great episode that people need to check out if you haven't checked that out with Joe Seagle. But it's a beautiful day in Florida again, and ready to talk shop with you, Joe.
Yeah, we always laugh with probate lawyers that people are just dying to get in to see you. So it's you've got a tough practice there, man. So tell us a little bit about your practice. Where all do you practice, and exactly what do you cover?
So I only practice in Florida. We do every county in Florida. It doesn't matter what it is. And my primary practice is handling probate administration. So in a nutshell, a lot of people own property, and it's usually a single family home, land. Maybe it's a secondary winter home. They own that property in their name and they die. And in order to get it out of their name to transfer to the heirs for them to sell or keep it or refi or do whatever with that property, they need to go through probate. So a lot of the investors, realtors, anybody that's in this industry that's finding these things, they're coming to me for this. So they're finding me to say, hey, Al, we got a situation. We got to do probate. That's my practice. I handle the probates. I wait till the close to get paid. We get them done in all these counties. We figure out the nuances. And that has just worked for my practice.
Now, I get a lot of real estate investors who contact me because I don't do probate. And they're always saying, hey, if you do probate, or do you know any probate lawyers? Because when they're doing probate, they may need to sell something and they want me or my buddies like you to call them and say, hey, I got this property in probate that needs to be sold. Do you find that it's sort of chicken and egg? Do you find that more often, or is it the investors already got the property and they're bringing it to you to get the title cleaned up?
Yeah, what's going on is they're already getting under contract with a seller. And so either they kind of ask some questions that forms a conclusion that it's going to need probate, or they find out once they've brought the contract to the title company that the title company's underwriter is going to call for a probate. And then when they say probate's needed, then they're coming over. So what we're seeing is that there's the need basis of, hey, we got to get this thing done because we can't close on the property until it gets done.
So you're on speed dial of a lot of title companies too.
There's a lot of different people that we have that find us, which is great because a lot of people are finding this stuff on the title commitments, or the investors are finding them on the deeds. I mean, there's so many various different people.
What I've been running into with probates lately, a lot of times as land trustee, we're the buyer. We're going to be the one taking title. But then, like you said, probate pops up and they go, well, it's got to be a probate. And the investor goes, well, I want to go ahead and start working on this property, or I want to go ahead and start marketing this property. And I'm always going, well, you need to wait for the probate. You need to wait for the probate. And they go, well, but maybe there's a mortgage on the property and they need to just keep the mortgage in good stead until they can get the probate done, then they can pay it off. And these investors are always going, well, they're sort of ready, fire, aim in all this. They want to go ahead and get control of the property and start doing the repairs, or they want to start spending money on it or start doing whatever. But they also want to have a lien on the property while it's going through the probate. And I go, well, you're sort of putting the cart before the horse. Do you ever see that coming up where that's happening? And if so, how would you recommend people handle that?
And I think I know where you're going with this, Joe. It's everybody wants to get going with the whole deal, but the necessary steps to closing on the deal haven't happened yet. So, when that's happened, my best advice is I wouldn't do anything until those steps take place first, because you never know what's going to come up in the probate. You never know what other things come up on the title commitment. So if you're starting to put money into the property without having due diligence done and run, you may find out there's a mortgage you didn't even know about, or other judgment liens against the property, maybe an IRS lien. You're putting yourself at risk by not having all of that due diligence and the probate done, or whatever needs to be done first. And it's funny you say that. There was something, early on in my practice, I can't remember if it was dealing with the tax deed or if it was some kind of quiet title action, but basically very similar. The investors wanted to start doing the rehab. They wanted to start doing anything to spruce up the property before anything got done. And I remember even back then, even 2019, Al would have just said, whoa, before you do anything, you need to get this thing done first, then you do it. But of course, that depends on who you ask. They don't want to wait, right? A lot of people don't want to wait, time's against them. So yeah, we've seen that too, Joe.
Well, and the big question too I get is, who should even sign my contract? I want to buy this property. The previous owner is gone. They're dead. And we've even had it where it's, this is the third generation that owns the property. So we've got 2 probates that needed to have been done that haven't been done. So who do I get to sign my contract? That's a big one I get. How do you typically answer those questions when people come to you?
That depends on who's in the lineage that ends up being the true heir. So great example, if you got a case where the lady owned the property, she had no will, she had no surviving spouse, and she had 2 kids ever. Ultimately, those 2 kids are the ones that are going to be signing the contract, because inevitably, once the probate's done, the title will shift to both of those people. And so people are amazed that, wait, you can go under contract with those 2 people before the probate. Yeah, nothing's saying you can't. But of course, you want to make sure that all of the due diligence in finding out who the people are is secured first, because probate's still got to get done, but there's nothing saying you can't. But those are the people. So another example, if there's a lady that dies, no will, no surviving spouse, and there's 10 kids ever, you got to get all 10. All 10 need to sign this contract. And the common mistake we see, Joe, is investors will get one person. It ends up being homestead property. And you and I both know with homestead, the idea is that title vests in everybody. And I see the case and I'm thinking, where are the other 9? And they haven't locked them up yet. Well, if you don't lock them up and then we do probate and we get it done and the other 9 say, I'm not signing the deed, it's not happening. So it's so important that you're not here to know everything before you get with the expert. But I think the bigger thing that you need to get from this is you got to make sure you're in touch with the experts and you get the people with the experts. You get them on the consult call. And I'm sure you would agree, Joe, there's nothing like having that conference call. The conference call, that's where it all comes out. Everything gets pulled out. And then from there, that's when you can take your next plan and attack it.
Well, and that's the thing I see too. So many investors come to me and they go, well, I got the PR of the estate to sign my contract. And I go, okay, so there's a probate open. Well, no probate's been opened yet, but they were his attorney. In fact, they were his power of attorney before he died. So they're the PR of the estate, right? And I'm going, no, that's not how it works. Not how it works at all. And then we get into, well, how many heirs did they have? I mean, we had one back when I did title. I had a title company years ago, and we were doing the closing, and they were doing the probate, and they thought they'd had all the heirs signed and everybody was set up. It was going to happen. The man was 92 when he died, and literally 2 or 3 weeks before closing, they were just starting to wrap up he had died without a will. And they were just starting to wrap up his probate. And this 20-something-year-old woman walks in, and she had a baby. And she said, "This is his child." And we're like, "No, really?" This 90-something-year-old man with a 20-something-year-old woman, he's had a baby, really? And I remember my title manager brought it to me, and I said, "Well, we always laughed about the fertile octogenarian when we were in law school, and I guess here's one. There was one." And they went through DNA testing and everything, and yes, it was an afterborn child that was entitled to a piece of that house, a piece of that property. So that's one of the stories I love to tell to investors, to let them know. It's like, you may think you've had everybody sign everything you need to sign, but until the wills or whatever goes through court and the judge has said this is it, it's not it. So that's why they definitely need to be talking to folks like Al and their title folks very early on. Don't just start dumping money into a house off the bat like that.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's a crazy story too, Joe. That's one for the books.
I've got them. I've got 30 years in title. You run into some stuff. What's some of the craziest things that you've seen? What's some of the biggest mistakes and some of the smartest things that you've seen real estate investors do whenever it comes to buying dead people's houses? Is the only way I can put it.
I mean, I think some of the biggest mistakes is one, about the contract, not getting all the right people down on contract. Two, not doing their due diligence to finding out things on the property. Like, for example, there was a great deal that these investors found, a land deal, like it was Lehigh Acres. Probate was easy, title looked great, and then everybody gets going, and all of a sudden they find a tortoise. So, that kills the whole deal, because now they can't build their builder backed out of the contract. And so, everybody put time and energy and effort, and they missed that part. So a lot of due diligence that we've seen. Also, just running numbers too, making sure you're in the right ballpark for what potential buyers are going to come in at. Because if you start getting experts like me involved or Joe involved, like, you got to know what your numbers are before getting people involved. And I think that sometimes that is not what happens. I mean, most of the time it does become a part of consideration, but there's so many things that I can think of that happen, like even like understanding that there's certain documentation that the sellers are going to have that helps qualify the seriousness level of a probate deal. Like, we've built in a probate checklist for our process, Joe. And we did it not only because of stuff that we need for our intake and our end, but it also shows that if there's no help or movement from the seller, maybe they're not interested in doing it. And then you may find a seller that is interested in doing it, and they do provide things. In terms of great things that we've seen that some investors do, maybe strategy wise, sometimes, I mean, obviously locking up all the heirs, sometimes maybe getting all the documents assigned by the heirs ahead of time, maybe deeds and closing docs, ahead of time. We've seen that. But that's a great question that you've asked in terms of strategy wise for investors, because there's not really many different techniques and maneuvers that you can go down. But I would say this also, being well versed in where deals can go. Like, for example, maybe you want to pick up a property that's heading to a tax deed auction, and it needs probate, but then you can't get the heirs in time, and then it gets lost at a tax deed auction. Well, maybe it's getting well versed in how do you work with those heirs to go collect the surplus, or um, or understanding that when you get these messy deals, how do you have a conversation with the title company about overcoming some of these things? Because sometimes they just look at the title company and just say, "Can we do it?" And they say no, but they never get into why. Why can't we do it? Why can't we get into something like this? So um, yeah, I'm sure after this podcast, I'm going to be thinking of all these different strategies that I've seen over the years. But those are some that just come to mind. Just being well versed in some of these maneuvers.
Well, one of the things I've had a lot of people out on spring break this week. I've had a lot of people on vacations and just out. So I have been deeply involved in closings where we are the trustee buyer, end buyer of these properties this week. And it's just blown me away how many of them were buying from estates that were opened last June. I mean, we're in March now, and it's been 7, 8, 9, 10 months that this has been going on. And now the title company, jumps up and down and goes, "Hey, it's ready. And we go, "Great. Well, we're ready too. Let's go ahead and buy." And everybody goes, "Okay, we're ready." And then the probate attorney comes back and says, "Wait. One more thing popped up during the hearing, the final hearing. The judge brought it to our attention, or the clerk brought it to our attention. Somebody brought it to our attention that there was one, maybe a return receipt card didn't come back or something like that." So talk about money and how much it's going to cost to take these things through probate. I think a lot of investors also way underestimate the amount of time it's going to take. And when time is money, in real estate especially, I think they need to really get a good handle up front. How long is this going to take? Because I just see so many investors and realtors who pop up and go, "Let's just in probate. This will be done in 60 days. It'll be over and we can close." I'm like, I always laugh when I hear that. I go, "Yeah, go talk to the probate attorney and see how that's going to happen in 60 days.
Joe, you'd be very surprised. Some of these probates can take a matter of a couple weeks.
Wow, you are
Yeah,
good.
yeah, no. Yeah, some of these cases in, like, a couple of my favorite counties are like Lee County, Clay County, Duval, and I'd surprise you with Hillsborough. Some of these, when you file that probate and you get everything in, and there's nothing to be contested, some of them get done in a matter of like a couple weeks,
Wow.
if not even sooner. And has I think that's what has shied away a lot of investors, is they're under the assumption that it's going to take 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, and it's not. And you may have the one county like Brevard or Lake or Pinellas where it's going to take like 3 to 6 months just because of things that may happen. Who knows? But overall, these counties, it could be a very efficient, quick process.
Well, you said you get paid. You'll get paid at the end when they sell the property. What, and this is going to be the question because I always hear it myself, about what is the average cost for a lot of these things?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, as a lawyer, I'm sure the answer really depends on so many variables, right? But on a plain vanilla scale, anywhere from 3,500 to 4,500 per probate, depending on what's going on, what county. Sometimes the counties have more procedures. It's going to be more. Sometimes we get double, triple probates, Joe, where it's not just one probate, it's two or three probates, and now you do the math. But again, every single one of these has to be analyzed, because we're only talking about the simple, straightforward, in and out probates. We aren't even talking about the big behemoth ones with the formal administration, the personal representative running the newspaper. Those are a totally different kind of price that really some investors don't ever see because their deals are just straightforward. But as I would always tell an investor or real estate agent, before you get into pricing, there's got to be an analysis. We can't even get into the pricing before we do analysis. And then once we do an analysis and we're like, okay, this is going to be as straightforward as we thought, then we dive in on that and we go from there. But that's pretty much the general range.
Okay. That's good to know. Cause I get that question. Like, well, how much is the probate going to cost? I always tell them talk to the probate attorney. That'll answer your question. And it depends. Yeah.
Yeah,
True,
exactly.
true that. How does your process work with investors and others who may want to have you handle a probate for them?
We have a 3-step process. This is what's so great. 3 steps. First step is we have a checklist. It's called the probate checklist. And on that checklist, we have certain items that we need before a consult, right? So that could include the heir info, their names, mailing address, email. The death certificate includes the will, or if there's a pour over will into a trust, and we need a copy of the trust. Maybe the contract with the investor to kind of see what's going on and who's locked up, because we're waiting until the closing to get paid. We need to know what's going on. Title commitment from the title company. Those are just a few things. So the part 1 is that we got to have the items from the checklist. Step 2 is, in our world of lawyers, the heir's got to make the initial contact with us to let us know, hey, we're interested in using Al services. Let's set up the consult, right? So that's always something that we have to explain to some people about. Hey, they got to be the ones to say, hey, we want to use Al. And then step 3 is, once we have 1 and 2, that's when we can gather everything, get everything on the calendar for a conference call. And what's so great is that we have a general conference call number. So once we've worked with you a couple of times, you know what the number is. We just got to make sure we get on the calendar. And my assistant, Gwen, she handles all of that. We get down, and that's where we talk about everything from there.
And then from there, you guys take it and put it into, I call it the chipper shredder. It starts moving its way through, making its way through.
It's either happening, it's not happening, needs to be revisited, or maybe it's a super complicated one that's going to take a while.
Now, in addition to probate, you were talking about tax deed quiet titles. Do you handle those as well?
No, I haven't handled those in like 4 or 5 years, but I remember getting into a few of those. That's a whole different animal. Like, quiet title is a whole different thing.
Service of process in those is a pain. I know that's the big one there.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of like structuring it too, because like on the legal side, there's definitely all the due diligence, the steps that you got to take, the length, the time. Like, those are the ones that take 6-9 months, like 1 year. But the issue that I've always felt with those is, on a volume standpoint, it's hard to figure that out on the business end with costs and fees and all these other miscellaneous things, because you and I both know, Joe, as lawyers, we can't be out the costs for sure, because those hard costs, they just hit. So that's a whole other model in and of itself.
Yeah. Do you find that each probate judge or probate clerk in each county has their own unique checklist of things that they're looking for all over the place?
Yeah, some counties have this. I don't know if it varies too much by county, except for certain ones. There are definitely certain counties that I don't know where they got their checklist from. I don't know who curated it, but they can get very detailed with what you put in the documents, right? And there's some counties that don't do checklists at all. We just submit everything, done, in and out. But there's some that you got to be mindful of. Like, some of the counties, they want us to talk about what the acreage is and the municipality, or an unincorporated issue. Some don't care about that, or some want more waivers because of post-deceased beneficiaries, like crazy stuff like that. But the point is that, the one benefit with working with someone like my law firm is we go to every county. So we've seen the nuances between each county and their requirements, right? And if, Joe, you said, hey, I got a deal right now in Pinellas, we would definitely talk about what that's going to look like, because I've got cases in Pinellas. If you're like, hey, Al, I got a case that I need your help in Palm Beach. Been there, done that. We'll talk about that. So, yeah, are there different things? Sure. Can they be overcome with time? But you got to learn. You got to work with the right people that know the nuances.
Yeah, I know. I remember from my title days, Miami-Dade. It was a petition to determine homestead, and everybody submitted everything like they would do in every other county. And the judge came back and said, Where's the affidavit from a neighbor? Where are the two utility bills to the decedent at that property? And I'm like, wow, I've never heard of that in any other county. And the probate attorney is like, that's Miami-Dade. It's just a thing that they do down there. The judges just want extra proof. And then I seem to remember Santa Rosa County had some, St. Johns County had some interesting things too. Back in the day, I don't know if they still do, but things I used to see way back in the way back. What does a typical day look like for you?
Typical day, waking up, working out, and then I do a lot of my case reviews in the morning. Cases that we got to pump out, drafts that we got to pump out, and I then get going with my consults. I usually do about 10 to 15 consults in a day because I know how to keep the consults very tight. I know how to go volume. I know. I can do that, Joe. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I know how to move really fast. Like my mind just goes really fast with these things, and I'm very efficient with my questions. I almost probably could be really good talking to sellers on the acquisition standpoint because I know how to move the conversation to get to the point, but not doing that. But between consults, introductory calls, maybe a podcast during the day, doing something like this. This is pretty much every day. I got my routine very dialed in on my systems. I have it a certain way. I got my calendar blocked out a certain way. Some days it goes longer because I'm contemplating, okay, like we got to fit everything in. And then some days I keep it shorter, keep it more tight because I have other engagements or speaking engagements, podcasts to do. But overall, keeping it really tight with my calendar.
One thing I didn't hear in there was how many emails a day you get through. How do you handle your emails?
You'd be very surprised how I do this, Joe. So I actually take care of my emails early in the morning. I think my level of self-awareness over time has definitely increased. And I'm sure you would probably tell me, as you age, you get that, but I definitely feel that. And, back when I first started my practice, my productivity time, whatever that was doing it at night. And I was doing emails and getting back to people at night or chaotically during the day. At some point, like in the last year, I kind of realized like getting up early in the morning and sifting through emails when it's quiet and, I can take time has been the best. And that's been the best. And how many emails? Probably 200 to 300 emails every day.
I feel your pain.
It's a lot to get through. Yes.
Yeah, mine, it's usually throughout the day. I'm again, everybody's on break right now, but most of my day, it's more higher level emails. But yeah, it's throughout the day I'm dealing with them. And somebody explained it to me one time. They said, imagine, when I first started practicing in the late 90s and email was prevalent, but not as big as it is now for lawyers. They said, what if someone ran in off the street every 5 minutes and dropped a stack of papers on your desk and said, here, I need you to look at this right now and respond to this and answer me back right now. And they're just lining up at your door and they keep doing that all day. Are you going to do that? And you go, well, of course not. I would never do that. Then why do you do it with email? So I've found, it's one of those basics I think that people like you and I over time, we just forget about because we handle email it's on our terms.
Right.
But there are so many people out there who are just, I think it's a dopamine rush to them to get hit with it. It's that little red dot on their phone, or it's the notification on their desktop saying you've got an email, and it's like, oh, I'm important right now. I can answer this, and I feel so heroic. I have to break myself of that too, every once in a while. But yeah, and I like that in the morning. I'm more the late night person. I'm just a late night person, so a lot of times I do get through a lot of the stuff late at night, which I guess could be an early morning for some people when it's 3 or 4 in the morning. But everybody handles it differently.
Yeah. And Joe, everybody's got a different routine for what works with them. And I think that, for me at least, it took time. Even now it's not perfect. Even now it's still not a perfect system. And But I think over time, as you run a business, that you start finding out how do you want to maintain high performance. And I'm a high performance person. Like I want to be like, sharp as tack like all the time. And it's hard. You get to Friday and you and I are probably like, woof, we're glad we made it through that. But everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to have a different way of doing it. And you learn from that.
What's a habit that you wish that you had started sooner?
Easily working out, easily. I was not doing that. And I mean like, a lot of people use working out for just, either strength or physical. I also love it for the mental side because it allows you to just get outside, get out, step away from the office, blow off steam, and, focus on yourself. And I think that had I, hindsight's 2020, and I wouldn't change anything in the past because it's gotten me to where I have today. But I think that is one thing for sure is working out and building that routine in every day.
Well, and do you go to a gym? Do you just go running? How do you work out a day? I just always like to know what different people do that works for them.
Strength training, gym. It can be HIIT, cardio. I mean, so many different things. I like changing it up usually from time to time about what I'm doing, just because it keeps it lively, right? You don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. But HIIT training has definitely been great, and then weight training as well. There's between the combination of all of those, it works.
Well, you mentioned what got us where we are today. Our mission is always to help other people aspire to a better life. So I always end each episode with asking the guest, who is someone who has helped you aspire to a better life?
Oh, easy answer. Mom. 100%. My mom has definitely pushed me from an early age to where I have gotten today. A story that she reminds me of constantly is when I was in college, I was a music major and I had no idea if I wanted to go to law school or what I wanted to do. Actually, you'd be very surprised. I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer back then. So, crazy idea. Who thought I was going to be a probate attorney? But I remember I was finishing college and I told her, I said, I think I'm going to take like a year off, think about everything. And I remember her reaction was like, no, you got to keep going. You're not taking a year off. You're going in. So, mom's always been there to push me and give me sound advice. She gives me real advice. And she's always helped me aspire to think about what do I need to do next? What's the next plan? What are the next goals and visions for what's to come, and just always push me to that next level.
That's wonderful to hear. That's also a good point to make out of that, is that a lot of kids are always asking me, what should I major in college to be a lawyer? And I always tell them, whatever you enjoy, whatever your passion is, because that's one of the things that makes law school so great, is that you're in there with people who majored in music, who majored in a hard science, or a lot of us, we majored in English. I majored in anthropology. I mean, you can major in just about anything as long as you can read, write, speak, and think well. You're going to do fine in law school. You're going to be a fine lawyer. But that's the thing. I'm really glad that you put that out there too, that you were a music major, because a lot of people go, well, what would I ever do with this? Well, you can be a lawyer. You can always be a lawyer.
You can be a probate attorney right there. How about that?
You can major. Everybody always says, oh, you major in anthropology. What a throwaway, what are you going to do with that? And I go, well, I think I've done pretty dang good. As an anthropologist. So, well, Al, it's always fun to talk with you. It's always great to hear from you. And I'm so glad you came on today to share all this with our audience. Again, folks, we're going to put it down in the show notes, but alnicoletti.com, and definitely follow his podcast. We're going to put a link to that down there too. And until then, everybody, trust this. Thanks for listening to this edition of Trust This. If you got something out of it, please press like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review to help us reach others who can benefit from this series. Until next time, keep aspiring to a better life.